Good evening, ladies, sisters from around the world, and welcome back to Connected Mothers. In this series, we have been using the 12 principles of energized living to move from distraction to connection in our parenting as we relate to our children. We've been moving from the outside in kind of parenting where all that matters is managing our children's behaviors, getting them onto schedule, getting them to do things that we want them to do with control, with bribing, with threatening, with pushing them and punishing them. And we're moving from that to really tuning into the inside and parenting from the inside out, tuning into the relationship and nurturing a close sense of connection with our child, with love, with concern, with teaching, with coaching, with guiding. And yes, consequences when necessary, but not in a punitive sense, only as a means of coaching. And to do all of this, we've been turning away from going with the flow to, and like just frazzled and disconnected, to really slowing down and making conscious choices that resonate with our values and with this whole system of thought that we're trying to integrate, and ultimately with our connection with Hashem and with our neshama. Now, the primary tool we've been using is the one we learned the first week. We talked about the first week, the power tool, which POWER. P is for pause, observe what's going on inside of ourselves. W, welcome Hashem into the story, into the situation. Welcome our values into the situation. E was embrace Hashem's empowerment of us, envision our child's best self. And R is resolve to engage from that place of connection and not distraction. Today, Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to talk about something that gets in our way of doing all of this, because so many people have asked this question. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to relate from a place of connection, but as I do, something derails me. I keep losing it. I get off track. What can I do to help myself stay on track? So first we want to know, what is it that's getting in our way? What is it? Because we can only confront whatever is in front of our eyes, whatever we could see. If it's invisible, we cannot challenge it. We can't do anything about it. So our first step is going to be to find out what it is that keeps getting us off track and derailing us. And then we could start figuring out how to deal with it. So that's what we're going to be talking about with Hashem's help today. The big stumbling block that gets in our way as we are striving to be the connected mothers that we want to be. What it is and how to deal with it so that it stops getting in our way. And it's super exciting to be exploring this. Tonight's topic is one of my favorite topics. But first, we're going to start with a parenting victory, a moment of choice that somebody shared, someone from our group shared. And this is a good time to remind each and every one of you, everyone who's listening, that as you go through your week, notice those moments in which you slow down and observe and welcome Hashem to the story and embrace Hashem's empowerment of you, envision your child's best self and resolve to engage from that place. Notice those moments where you use that power tool, and then share those moments with your friends, the friends who are on this group and other people in your life, because we want to start changing the tide from the society that measures and values everyone by their achievements and by what things look on the inside. We want to change the tide. We want to change the current. We want to change the culture to one that respects and values the work that it takes to parent from the inside out, to really nurture that sense of connection and make the relationship our priority. And definitely also do all of us on this group a favor, and please share those moments with us here on this group so that we can learn from each other and keep on growing alongside each other. That's what this is about. You can share live during the group, before, in the beginning, at the end, or in the middle, or you could email to Shterna@energizedliving.org, and I'll be so happy to share that with our group. So here's something from Toby, and I want to thank you, Toby, for sharing this. Toby writes, I wish the parenting workshop would be ongoing because I am gaining so much and we all need these reminders. It's really helping me tremendously. It's all I've been looking for, and it is bringing what I want in my life to the forefront of my consciousness. So she wrote this the morning after last week's, after Thursday morning, last week after Wednesday night. Okay, while I was listening to last night to this series, my daughter was listening in to some snippets. I guess she was listening in the beginning where we always share different people's experiences. So she heard that people were sharing experiences and she said, Mommy, share what happened before. So I asked her what she was referring to. And this was the incident she meant, okay? The incident that she meant was that she was having a very difficult test in Chumash the next day, and she was very overwhelmed and frustrated about it. She also felt that the teacher does not understand her, which added to the volume of her emotional baggage that she was carrying. At one point during the evening, she started crying about it, just crying from her overwhelm. She was crying and crying. She was so distraught. I did not stop her. I was just being there next to her, holding her, being present with her through her tears. After she calmed down, I told her, just try your best and Hashem will take care of the rest. And I shared some other encouraging words. So that's the incident that my daughter wanted me to share. When she told me that I should share this incident with the group, I asked her, which part do you want me to share? She said that she felt so good that I let her cry and that I made her feel really at peace. I want to ask Toby if she really used the word peace and how old she is. She really used that word peace, because that's pretty amazing. Even if she used a similar word, this is a great moment. And if she did use the word peace, it's probably because you use the word peace. And that's such a beautiful gift to give your child, that kind of vocabulary. So thank you for sharing that with us. When we are external oriented, when we look at our roles as the big boss who's in charge of managing, making sure everyone is neatly lined up, doing the right things at the right time, from that perspective, tears are an annoyance. Tears are the distraction. Tears are bothersome. I remember feeling that way when I was a younger parent, that if my child would cry, my goal in that moment is make those tears stop. That's all I wanted to do. Restore calm in the house, restore peace, restore that sense of like everything is going okay. Tears were not welcome, right? But that's only from the perspective of needing to manage and being like external oriented, that things have to be okay on the outside. When one of our children cried, many of us want to just get them to be quiet and stop making noise so that the house will not feel so unsettled. And when we do that, we are giving a child a message that we really do not want to give them. The message is that emotions are dangerous. Emotions are unwanted. They are scary. They are not desirable. The message is avoid emotions at all costs. Make them stop. Make them go away. That's all that matters. Make them go away, which is so dangerous, because not only because it's invalidating. Of course, invalidating in itself is unhealthy. It's dangerous. More importantly, it's dangerous because emotions are actually not scary. That's not the true story about emotions. Emotions are just energy that pass through us. Even intense emotions are healthy. They're okay. We could feel sad. We could feel bad. We could feel disappointed. We could feel hurt. We could feel frustrated. We could feel overwhelmed. It's okay. We could even fall apart. It's okay. We want to breathe through it and trust that we will get through it. And we do. It will pass. We will be okay. We can trust that we will be okay. And then we don't get stuck in it. And then we don't get stuck in the negativity we don't get stuck in a negative spiral that really has no end. Like in this story, I think this story is a classic, beautiful example of just it. Her daughter was crying, so distraught, and her mother did not fix a thing. She did not create any solution. She didn't even make the teacher into a bad person. She didn't get on her team and say, oh, this is so crazy. This is so ridiculous, such a hard test and such a bad teacher. And what are we going to do about it? None of that at all. She just held her through it. She just held her through it, being there with her, holding space for the little girl to pour all that overwhelm into her mother's lap. And that's such a big gift, to hold space for our children's emotions, just holding space for it. with that, she created a beautiful moment of connection and huge, wonderful stuff. And of course, none of us are eager. None of us want our children to have difficulties or overwhelm or frustration or disappointment. We want things to be smooth for them. We want them to be happy. We want things to go well for them, of course. But every single child will at times feel frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed, hurt, insulted, whatever it is, right? Every child will feel like that the cards of their lives are stacked against them and things are just too overwhelming. Every child's going to feel that at different times. So the question is, what are they going to do with that, right? Everyone's going to feel a whole range of unpleasant emotions. What's our role during those times? Not to shut them up, because what's the point of that? That teaches them, that does the opposite of everything we want to do. Our role during those times is to be there for them and support them through it, help them breathe, remind them that they are okay and that they will be okay and that they'll get through this. And we do the opposite when we are afraid of their emotions, when we are afraid of our emotions. If we are afraid of our emotions, if we cannot tolerate our emotions, what do? That's when things become so unhealthy. Because if a person cannot tolerate a painful or difficult or unpleasant emotion, that's a whole new level of suffering. That's a really bad story about a painful reality. If I believe that I cannot tolerate this pain, that's when I need to deny it. That's when I need to be dishonest with myself about it. And of course, with other people about it. That's when I start lying to myself about my emotions. And then I for sure can't deal with it because I don't have an open communication between my mind and my heart. My mind doesn't trust my heart. My heart doesn't trust my mind. It's one big mix up, one big confusion. That's what I need to avoid it, to numb it, to run away from it, to make it stop. And these are all kinds of seriously unhealthy responses in what could otherwise be a perfectly healthy situation. So that's why I made such a big deal about this story, because I really love what Toby did, what Toby shared. Thank you, Toby, for sharing it. If we don't do this, we get the opposite of what we're talking about here. We want our children to learn how to regulate themselves, to bring themselves to a state of calm when they're having these kinds of difficult emotions. And every time our child practices getting through a challenging moment, we're building their resilience to those challenges and to discomfort and to displeasure and to disappointment and all the other stuff that they're gonna experience. We're empowering them to see themselves as people who could do hard things. It's not just something we're telling them, oh, I know you could do hard things. We're showing them. We're allowing them the opportunity to do hard things. We're holding their hands through those hard things, and they come out at the other end and feel better. People who are not afraid of their emotions are more resilient, more courageous, more brave. They can regulate themselves more easily despite unpleasant emotions, because those emotions are not scary. We can walk through those emotions and trust that we'll be safe and we'll come out on the other side stronger, healthier, lighter, more beautiful for having had that experience. So thank you again for sharing that experience. And here's one more. As it was nearing the time to get into the Connected Mothers workshop last week, my son was not in bed and was being challenging. I was tempted to just get into the class and whatever happens, happens. But instead, I first got him settled and gave him some time and attention, because that is what this is really all about. To actually do what we're learning and not just satisfying my desire to hear more and more and more. So thank you very much for sharing that. It's those little moments of choice, those little moments, one little moment at a time, that we think are not so important in the bigger picture. Those little moments where we put our children first, before other people, before other interests. And of course, there are times when we put our interests before their individual needs, but that also is in their best interest, because you want to be a person. But little moments where we make connection a serious priority, a committed, a real commitment in action. And these moments become the fabric of a meaningful relationship with our children. These moments become the solid, strong foundation where our child learns, I matter, I am loved, I am wanted, I am taken care of. And with that, they can take care of others. With that, they can take responsibility for their behavior and take their rightful place as givers in society and as key players in Hashem's world. So thank you again for sharing. And now we're going to jump right into tonight's topic. We'll talk about it for a few minutes and then we'll open to questions, okay? We learned our first principle 2 weeks ago. Principle number 1 is Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Ma'irasha Kehilos Yaakov. The Torah that Hashem commanded us through Moshe is the inheritance of every single one of us. The Torah is our deepest truth, our deepest value. And the principle in action is to align our values, to align our beliefs with Hashem's truth. We are so blessed to have the Torah. And what the Torah gives us is more than anything, is it gives us Hashem. It gives us an ultimate truth that we can measure all our values and rules and beliefs by. So the world values what we could see and touch. The world measures us and our child from the outside, by the behavior, by what things look like, by the presentation, by the good impression, the looks, the management part of our parenting. The Torah gives us a true value, a deeper value, a value that we cannot see or touch, the inside, our neshama. And the most important part of raising our child is the parts that we cannot even see. It's our relationship with our child. So we want to align our values with Hashem's reality, with a truth that cannot be seen or measured, and to give our children a sense of that value, that each of our children should value themselves for that truth. They shouldn't measure themselves by anything that they do, whether it's an accomplishment or a failure, whether it's a success or a rejection, whether it's something, a strength or a weakness. They should not measure themselves by that. They should measure themselves by the truth of who they really are, their neshama. And that's the most beautiful gift we can give our children, is a true sense of identity, a true sense of healthy, wholesome self. And we could do that by constantly aligning and realigning our rules and our values by Hashem's truth, by Hashem's reality. That was a summary of principle number 1. Principle number 2 is Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Listen, Yisrael, Hashem is our power and He is one. Hashem is one. Hashem is our one and only power, our exclusive power. What is power? Power is a force of energy that causes action or inaction. When we say that Hashem is the one and only power, we mean that Hashem is the only force of energy. Hashem is the only cause. He's the only source of strength. He's the only true existence. Nothing exists outside of Hashem's will. Nothing could happen without Hashem giving it permission to happen. Everything is only caused by Hashem. We're dependent on nobody and nothing but Hashem. We're powered on nobody and nothing but Hashem. It's a huge, huge, huge concept. And I want to put that in context of tonight's question that a few people asked. Okay, people have said, I want to connect with love, and I keep going there and I keep trying. I'm using these tools that we're talking about. I'm being mindful of that, but keep finding myself stuck and totally far off. And I find myself yelling and threatening and bribing and moving right back into the patterns I really, really don't want to keep holding on to. Why do I keep getting derailed? I believe that if I could point to one thing that keeps messing us up, it would be fear. F-E-A-R, the F word, F word. It's a 4-letter F word, F-E-A-R, fear. Okay, fear messes us up because in every moment we are engaging from a place of connection or we're getting derailed by fear. Okay, what kind of fear? We interpret the story of whatever's going on, whatever a child says or does, we have a commentary about that story. And very often fear is the author of that commentary. Fear says, I will not have my needs met. I won't have what I need. I will have a crazy child. This child will grow up to be totally undisciplined, totally unmanageable, the bully of society, the Eisvarf, the reject, the unwanted person. I will not be able to manage. I will go crazy. This is dysfunctional. Our house will fall apart. Everyone will soon know that I am dysfunctional. It's all fear. It's all fear. When we are in a place of fear, what happens is we have a blessed instinct that we're all familiar with. It's called the fight or flight instinct, which means that when we're in danger, we have an extra rush of adrenaline that makes us hyper focused on protecting ourselves from the enemy. That means in that moment of fight or flight, what we're doing is all our senses are focused on either escaping from the enemy or attacking the enemy. And when we have this sense, when this instinct is switched on in interacting with our child, what happens is that we get into this mode of fear, and our hyperactive fight or flight instinct is switched on high alert. And who's the enemy? It's our child. Our child, in that moment, our child becomes the enemy. Our child becomes the one who we are afraid of. And that's what causes us to act irrationally, and our values and our desires and our rules and all the commitments that we make go out the window. They're totally irrelevant because we are not in a place of thinking. What somebody said last week, I'm in my amygdala, she said, right? That puts us into our amygdala. That puts us into our irrational, primitive, unthinking, illogical, non-executive functioning space. And we relate to our child as if he or she is the enemy from a very primitive place, and we lose ourselves. And we say things we don't mean. We do things we would never say. We might revert back to all the behaviors we said we would never do: shaming, blaming, beating up with our words, or sometimes even chas v'shalom, using hands, being punitive, being inconsiderate, labeling, like all the stuff that we really don't want to do. So the solution is the work of Principle 2. Principle 2 is a very, very powerful principle. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's the foundation of all of Yiddishkeit, of the entire, of Yiddishkeit, right? It's the foundation. It's the signature of faith in Hashem. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And as an action, it is to attribute all power to Hashem, to consciously give all the power in the universe to Hashem. Whatever we value is where we experience our emotions. So if we value Hashem, we will attribute power to Hashem. And if we fear Hashem, in the sense of like having that sense of awe that really only He is in control. So I always say, if Hashem is our power, then our child could be our child. But if Hashem is not our power, then our child is our power. And if our child is our power, then that's very scary, and we will relate irrationally. They will become the enemy because they will trigger our fight or flight instinct. If we want to be proactive in dialing down or disabling the fuse that switches on our fight or flight instinct when we're interacting with our child, the proactive behavior, and this is not an overnight magical thing, we'll talk about what we could do in the moment, but what you could do proactively is start consciously attributing power to Hashem. That means really thinking about Hashem every single day, saying Shema every single day, recognizing, taking that extra 30 seconds to consciously absorb the truth that only Hashem runs the show. I am dependent on nobody, on nothing but Him. He alone controls everything that happens. He alone determines the outcome of how my child is going to be in 10 years from now. All I have to do is show up and do my very best from a place of calm and from a place of experiencing His empowerment and His love for me. And why I want to just say, because we use the language of fearing Hashem a lot. And it's a good thing to fear Hashem, because if we fear Hashem, we don't fear anyone else, because we have that sense of truth. He alone is in charge, and I don't have to fear anyone else. But when we talk about fearing Hashem, we're not talking about fear of punishment. Fear of punishment is really fear of discomfort. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to have that displeasure. I don't want to have that suffering, right? It's personal. It's about ourselves. It's not about Hashem. When we are afraid of Hashem, what we really mean is we love Hashem so much that we do not want to disappoint him. We do not want to put any barriers in our relationship between us and him, between him and us. We don't want to unbalance our sense of connection. We want to feel the closeness. We want to let in the light of his warmth into our lives. I don't want to reject it. I don't want to turn my back on someone who loves me, someone who's protecting me, someone who's taking care of me. I don't want to turn my back on him. The more we fear Hashem, the less we fear anyone else. The more we fear Hashem, the less it will be possible for our child to trigger our fight and flight instinct. And the more we attribute power to Hashem, the less we're going to slip into fear of everyone and anyone. Because the truth is that our child has no power over us. Nobody can make me a good mother or a bad mother, but Hashem already made you a wonderful mother. I want to give you an example of what I mean when I'm talking about making your child into a power, okay? So what I mean is this. You worked hard, you made a good supper, and you want to feel that you did something good. You want to feel successful, okay? Your child walks through the door and says, ew, soup, yuck, right? Disgusting, ew, I hate it. And in that moment, right, if my child has the power to make me a good mother or a bad mother, if my child has the power to make my time meaningful or meaningless, then that makes me really angry, because now I am forced into the position of being a bad mother. Now I have become, now all that work went out the window. It means nothing. It's meaningless. It has no value because he, rolled his eyes at my hard work. Instead, what we want to do, and that's going to make us, first of all, feel very hurt. And second of all, it might push us into anger and get into that argument. Is that nice to say? A whole negative spin. But imagine if we have that sense of security of who we are. We have the sense of security that when I make a healthy supper and I work hard to cut up vegetables and make a soup, which takes time. Yes, I know about all those shortcuts. I'm just using this as an example, okay? Or you cut up a salad. So if I have value in that for myself, then when my child comes home and complains about the soup or complains about the salad or the supper, then it's not about me anymore. It's about him. It's about her. And I could say, oh, you're disappointed. I could validate the emotion. I could speak to the emotion instead of getting stuck on the words. I could say, oh, I see you're disappointed about the supper. And then it's not about me. It's just he's disappointed about the supper. And if I want to teach him or her to speak nicely, I could say, I appreciate it when you say it in a nice way. I like when you speak nicely. Can you try? Can we do a rewind of this moment? And there's no negative energy here. There's no emotional despair and fear and anger and frustration and hurt and all that stuff that makes this interaction a negative one. Yeah, we could teach, but if we're teaching from a place of no negative emotional energy, that's what makes our words enter their hearts, because it's not coming from our fear, it's coming from our hearts. It's not coming from our fear of becoming a nobody, of being meaningless, of our work being made into nothing. It's coming from our desire to connect, to teach, to love, to raise our child to be the best person that he or she could be. Do you hear the difference? I'll give one more example of what this looks like. If children are having a fight, right? I know that's the one thing that makes me, that really bothers me, because I think if I can't get them to stop fighting, then I'm the most dysfunctional person. I realize that I judge myself as a mother based on how well the kids get along, how well my children get along with each other. And once I realized that had the power to make me it also had the power to break me. Anything that has the power to make me has the power to break me. So realizing that helped me change my understanding of that. And now it's like, if they're arguing, it's not about me. It's an opportunity to teach them. It's an opportunity to guide them. And it's an opportunity to help them grow, to teach them communication skills and problem solving skills and all that. When you take the power out of it, you can make it into a teachable moment. When we're afraid for whatever reason, whether we're afraid because of what they're going to turn out like, or we're afraid of because what they're going to make us into, right? If we don't have a strong sense of self and I'm already a good mother and I'm okay, and then they have the power to make me into a good mother or a bad mother. That's about me. And about them, if I don't really trust Hashem that my children will be okay, and really he's the only one who has the power to make that a reality, right? But if they have the power to make that a reality or not, if they have the power to define our family and make me proud, so to speak, of them, then, or make me into, make my parenting a disaster, chas v'shalom, because of the way they're going to turn out, that is something that makes every interaction a possibility for fear and negativity and hurt and rejection and anger and frustration and all that yucky stuff, instead of peace, love, and pleasant, nurturing connection. I'm going to stop here for a moment for questions, and then we could continue with more practical ways of how to help us through this. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and we all understand what we're talking about when we talk about how fear gets in our way. And fear is the number one thing that derails us when we're trying to relate from a place of love and connection. And the work in general is making Hashem into our power. The more Hashem is our power, the less our children will have the power to trigger our fight or flight instinct. I just want to say a special welcome. I'm looking at the some of the names here. I want to say a special welcome to all the Gan Yisrael mothers who joined. I want you to know that this series is really in honor of the Gan Yisrael mothers, because we were having a chinuch event in school, and in part of the chinuch evening that we had, I was talking about it with the principals of the school, and we're like, there must be a follow-up. So I said, okay, we're going to do a 6-week follow-up, connected mothers, Gan Yisrael mothers. And then I was like, you know what? If we're doing it for Gan Yisrael mothers, we may as well open it to our broader group, the Energized Living community, and that's what happened. So thank you all, the Gan Yisrael mothers, for inspiring this and for sharing your feedback as we've been going along. It's been real, and we have one more week, but maybe we'll do this again soon. Okay, so here's a question. What do we do when it becomes excessive and also at all the wrong times? Busy dealing with a few other children in a shop, in a time of pressure or time that we just can't give that attention. When a child is crying. So when a child is crying and we don't have the time to sit there and be with them, first of all, we need to make the time, at least one little hug, at least one little eye contact, to say, I know, I get it, I hear you, I see you, I love you. And then we need to go run back to change, we're in the middle of changing the baby's diaper, or the baby's going to do something dangerous. We have to turn off the fire. I think that's okay. But one little acknowledgement, I think we can always, we always need to squeeze in, number one. And number two is, at least don't make them shut up, if I dare use a bad word in a public forum. At least don't, make that your focus. At least let them cry. Let them have that space to unleash their emotion. Don't give them a negative message about that emotion. Okay, I would love if anyone wants to speak up. That's an excellent question. First of all, it's a good idea to encourage your husband to also learn and have an opinion and develop and think about it. Have a conversation on a date night when you're spending time with your husband. It's when, from a place of safety, from a place of love, from a place of trusting your husband, I think it's okay to make a request. Say, it would really mean a lot to me Some husbands, you could have a conversation and what do you think and come to a conclusion. But some husbands, you could just say, it really means a lot to me when a child cries to let them cry. Do you mind, trying not to shut them up and just give them that space? And if he says, well, it's really annoying, say, do you mind? It really, go back to the end. It would mean so much to me if we give them that space. And if he says, well, it's really annoying, then it's fine. Let it go, because above all, your child needs you and your husband to be a team and for you to trust your husband. And I think it's okay ultimately if at least they're getting a message from you that emotions are okay. I don't think a child will be damaged by that message from your husband. They would be much more damaged if there was chas v'shalom, a lack of shalom bias. That's always, it's not abusive. It's not worth it to, obviously, if a husband is beating up a kid or being very toxic in the way they speak to a child, that's something else. That I would say, let's go to a Rav. We must talk about this. I'm not okay with it. If these other steps of, asking, making requests that are simple. One thing I want to say when talking to men, and I know this is off topic, we could spend an hour just talking about how to make requests, but what I found works with men is don't tell them what not to do. Just ask what you would like. Don't say, don't do this. I hate when you do that. Just stay away from that. Just say, could you please, blah, 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 whatever it is that you want. It means a lot to me if you could please just say exactly what you want, not what you don't want. It makes a huge difference because a healthy man wants to please you and wants to make you happy. And if you give them an easy way to make you happy, boom, very often they're in. But sometimes they get derailed and their fight or flight instinct gets triggered because you are their power. Very often we are our husband's powers and we trigger their fight or flight instinct. And the minute we start criticizing them, they're in fight or flight mode and we're the enemy and the conversation goes nowhere. Right. And it doesn't call for resentment to your husband either that, oh, I have to be the one. Every child has exactly the parents that they need designed by Hashem. And our children need, it took me a long time to learn that, a lot of women think that we know better because maybe we read more books and maybe we read more articles and maybe we go to more chinuch workshops. But there's something so precious about our husband's way, even if it's different from ours. And it's worthwhile to respect it and to know that just because we think this is better doesn't mean it's the only way that is good. And the very fact that there's respect for our husband's way is such a beautiful gift that we're giving our child. We're teaching them to respect, even when we don't like a particular thing about a person, we could still respect them. And respect that they have the authority and the position and the right and the privilege to be them. And it's okay, it's not dangerous. Nobody's gonna die because, we didn't allow, we told them to be quiet when they were crying, or because they didn't comfort them in exactly the same way that we do. It's good to remember that respect is such a big deal. Anyways, that's like a whole different topic, but thank you very much for bringing it up. So first of all, we talked about proactively attributing power to Hashem. And this we could do every single day by saying Shema, consciously absorb the fact, write it down on a piece of paper once after tonight, maybe later tonight or tomorrow morning, take a few moments, sit down and write yourself on a paper what you want to believe about power and who has control. And use these words, power, dependency, needs, fear, all these key words that we're talking about. Come up with a 4 or 5 line belief, a paragraph that you want to believe, that you want to remember, that you want to live by. That Hashem is my only power, that he's the only one who controls the world and directs every single thing that happens. That I am dependent on him and only him for anything I need. That he loves me, that he's protecting me, that he's taking care of me. That because of Hashem's presence in my life, I am always secure. I am always in good hands. And he is giving me everything I need right now, empowering me, encouraging me to show up to this moment and give it my best shot and to have the best, and I could expect that with his help, I will see the best outcome. I might not see it today, but I will, the Ezra Hashem, with his help and with his support and with his continued love and presence and protection, we will see the best outcome. we think about that every day as we say Shema, it really, really, really is helpful. That's proactively, okay? Another thing that we could do proactively is think about the visual that I very often bring to my mind is the visual of a vacuum cleaner, where there's a flow of energy flowing, or sucks in energy, okay? So I want to point that vacuum cleaner this way between Hashem and me. I want the energy to be flowing between me and Hashem. And how do I make that energy flowing between me and Hashem? Everything that I do, I don't do this all the time, but I'm speaking in I because I could speak in we. Okay, how do we make the energy flow between us and Hashem? As we go throughout our day, we can stop and ask ourselves, what is driving me to do this? Why am I doing this? And let Hashem be the reason why we're doing whatever we're doing. Let it not be robotic. Let Hashem be the reason we are doing whatever we're doing. I'm washing the dishes because Hashem wants me to wash the dishes, because Hashem wants me to have a clean house, because it's more bakavadik, because dira na'am archeves daita shel adam, because it will make a pleasant environment. It will make my house a beis hamikdash. And obviously, we're not thinking that every single second, every single day, right? But a few times during the day, think about it. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And let Hashem's truth, let Hashem's presence, let Hashem's kingship be the answer. That's how we create that flow of energy between us and Hashem. Let's remember that Hashem loves us and that we love Hashem. When things happen, thank you, Hashem. When things don't happen that way we want them to, please, Hashem. Notice that Hashem loves us and love him back. These are all ways that we create the energy proactively between us and Hashem. By contrast, let's notice when the energy is between us and other people, they are the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. Why am I cleaning this house? Because that person is coming to visit and I want to make a good impression. Why am I dressing my kid, dressing my child beautifully? Because I want his playgroup teacher to love him, right? Let Hashem be. Now that's going to happen. If I think that it's part, it doesn't mean, what I'm trying to say is we don't need to ignore the ways of the world or totally say we're going to now dafka dress our child not in pretty clothing or not in not in clothing that we like, because Hashem doesn't care. Hashem does care. Hashem wants us to feel good in a physical way. And yeah, we need to have clean clothing. We need to have pretty clothing. We need to feel like, you have a clean house and a bakavadik space where you feel it's pleasant and it's a happy environment and a pleasant environment. But the why is not to impress or please or get anybody's attention or approval or validation. The why should be Hashem. The more the why is Hashem, the more that energy is flowing between us and Hashem, and the less it's flowing between us and other people and between us and our child. And then when Hashem is our power, our child could be our child. And since somebody mentioned husband, when Hashem is our power, our husbands could be our partner. Okay, if our husband is our power, if we need his approval, if we need him to be doing exactly what we're doing, if we need him to change according to our specifications, if we need him to be our ideal version of who he is supposed to be, in order for us to be who we are, that's making him into a power. And he cannot be our friend. He cannot be our partner. There can't be love. There will be fear. There will be tension. Our fight or flight instinct will be triggered wherever we are giving power to a person or to a thing. So those are two things that we could do proactively. Number one is write down what you want to believe about Hashem and read it every day for a good week, maybe 2 weeks. And then consciously think about it as you're saying Shema every single day. Okay, that was number one. Number two is that visual of a vacuum cleaner. Transfer that flow of energy between you and Hashem instead of between you and your child, between you and your neighbors, between you and your husband, between you and anyone or anything. And how do you do that? By asking yourself why I'm doing it and doing whatever it is that I'm doing, and letting the answer be to serve Hashem, to please Hashem, because Hashem wants me to demonstrate the value of my neshama, to demonstrate the value of my child's neshama, to demonstrate my respect for myself. These are things, the more we make this the why, the more we give the power to Hashem versus power to, making other people into our powers and inviting tension and our fight or flight instinct to be triggered. Those are two proactive things. And the other thing that we could do in the moment is the power tool, which we've been talking about since week 1, right? Pause, observe, welcome, envision, and resolve. And another thing to be proactive, then that's what you do in the moment. When you feel yourself sweating and your adrenaline pumping, use the power tool. Pause sometimes means pause, and sometimes it means stop, drop, and think. Stop, drop, and think. Stop, drop, and get out of that situation. Stop, drop, and move away so that you can give yourself space to dial down your fight or flight instinct. Somebody asked a question today, and I want to put that into context of what we're talking about. She was very honest, and she said, I'm working on changing a habit for a few years. Okay, she's working on changing a habit for a few years. What is the habit that she's trying to change? She said, I get upset, and what happens is I hit my child. I lose it, I become irrational, and I literally beat up my child. And I've been trying for years to change this, and I can't. I lose it. And she said that this is not how she was treated as a child. This is not her trauma. This is her inability to control herself. She gets lost in her intense emotions, and she cannot regulate it. And she can't stop. She can't pause, and she just goes. So here's what I want to say. And I think that that's a very extreme example, but I think each and every one of us, I would love if you take a moment right now to become aware of something in your life that you do with your child that you really do not want to be doing. It's the opposite of connection. It's fear. It's total hyperactive fear. It's that fight or flight instinct, and you're acting to your child as if he's the enemy. Maybe you're blaming, maybe you're threatening, maybe you're shaming, maybe you're giving him labels or her labels. Maybe you're punishing, maybe you're being mean, maybe you're really putting them down, maybe you're using cynicism or real sharp words or anger, or like really comparing her to another. Maybe you're predicting doom and gloom for the future about what she's going to turn out like. All this kind of stuff. Maybe you're ignoring, maybe you're giving them the cold shoulder. Think about in your life where you are doing something that you don't want to be doing. And the trick with changing is to push back that moment of choice. It's very, very hard to stop yelling when you're in the middle of a rant. It's possible, but it's very, very hard. It's much easier to stop if you know that you have a tendency to rant and yell and get into that, irrational self. What you want to start doing is noticing what it looks like when you're getting out of control. Notice what it looks like the minute you're getting out of control, and force yourself, like really make it a priority to stop, drop, and run. Literally stop, drop, and do the power tool in a private space. Stop, drop, and get out of that situation. Move away, because it's not safe for you to be around your child when you are going to be exploding with rage or with shaming behaviors or with anything else. It's not safe. It's dangerous. So stop, drop, and become safe. Move out of the situation and do whatever you need to do for yourself to calm down. And the two things that you could do for yourself are this. Number one, use that power tool. Take deep breaths, remind yourself that you're safe, and get back into your rational self. And the second thing you could do is ask yourself, what do I need to do for myself so that I could show up with love and with kindness, with patience and connection? Okay, what can I do for me so that I could be the mother that I want to be? Asking yourself that question is like taking care of that little child in you that's getting so worked up and so overwhelmed. And it's going to help you regulate yourself. By taking care of yourself, you can take care of your child better. So move back that point of choice. In a moment when you're so overwhelmed, it's hard to make that choice. Start noticing when you're getting stuck. Start noticing when you start sweating, when you're losing your patience, when your adrenaline is starting to race, when you're becoming more irritable. And that's when you want to stop, drop, and run. Not in the middle of a rant, but of course, if you do catch yourself in the middle of a rant or middle of that fight or flight hyperactive instinct, and you stop mid-sentence, stop mid-word, stop wherever you remember, stop and turn around. You could turn around, but the first thing is to stop. And sometimes it's as simple as splashing cold water on your face to break that pattern, saying a bracha shakol niyah slowly and drinking a cup of cold water, breathing. These things sound very simple, but they really, really, really work to break that pattern, to get you out of the fight or flight instinct and back into your regulated, calm sense of self. And as a preventive to doing that, I want to say mothers really need sleep. Try to see what you can cut out of your life to make your day more manageable. Maybe it's less shopping. Maybe it's less cooking. Maybe it's less cleaning. Maybe it's more cleaning help and more help in general. Maybe it's less browsing on the web or reading at night or doing other things that are really, really, really a waste of time, a mindless waste of time. Try to think where you can cut, what you can cut out so that you could create more space for being the mother that you want to be. I hope that answers that question. I don't know if the person is here on the phone, but I hope that answers the question. And if there are no other comments or questions, we'll wrap up. If anybody wants to share a thought or tell me what you're taking home, that's a very good thought. Thank you so much. In short, what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that your son was coming home and very often dysregulated, if I want to use that word, like in not focusing, not willing to cooperate, and speaking negatively and not acting himself. And when you were trying to push standards and push rules and say, well, now we're doing it and discipline him, it just escalated and made things worse. Whereas if you saw yourself as a force of calm in the situation and you took ownership of your role as the mother and as the one who is in charge of setting the pace and who could decide what matters and what doesn't matter. And if you see that he's having a hard day, no, we're not going to make that homework. You don't must sit down now for 10 minutes and read. If you really had a hard day, and it doesn't matter that I'm going to let that fall because I, as the mother, I'm going to make that executive level decision that this is going to be okay. And we're going to do things at a different pace around here because I am in charge. And that reminds me of another question that we want to ask ourselves, where if we're talking about power and giving all the power to Hashem, when Hashem is our power, we have power to choose. And that's a huge part. I mean, in the book, in the book, Your Awesome Self, which this series is based on, power is the biggest idea. It's like 3 big concepts that we're not going into, but one of them is this, that Hashem gives us the power of choice. When Hashem is our power, we have the power to choose what we're going to say, and we see ourselves as the key players in our relationships. We see ourselves as having a big impact on other people as opposed to being victims of other people. So in our relationship with our child, very often, especially as our children get older, closer to teenage years, starting from age 9, 10, 11, and they have bigger mouths and bigger vocabulary and harsher words, and they pick up some negative things from friends and from everything. And they become little women or little men. It's easy for us to get into that mode where we are a victim of their ideas or their bad moods or their words, and subconsciously we are the victim. And in that place of victimhood, we don't have a choice. So another very important question to ask ourselves when we feel like we're losing it, as part of that calming down process, stop, drop, and get calm. Stop, drop, and get calm. One of the things that we want to ask ourselves is, who is, between me and my child, who is holding all the power? And it's always us. Parents, we have the power in the relationship. And mostly what our child is doing is to get a little bit of that power flowing between us and them. They want that power, they want that energy, they want that connection, even if it's a negative connection. So it's very good to be aware of that and to hold on to it. And I love what you shared. That's great. It's good to remember that our houses are construction zones. They're not supposed to look perfect. There will be things spilled because we're building something important here. We're building children, we're building lives, we're building the future, we're building the world. So it's a construction zone. It's sometimes going to be messy. It's sometimes going to be noisy. It's sometimes going to be unpleasant, but it's a construction zone and something good is coming out of it. And out of every mess, we could make more of a mess or we could build it into something beautiful. And you took that opportunity that you just shared. Orange all over, orange juice spilling all over the table and the kids fighting. And you use that as a moment of connection. I want to close with a story that happened to me, and I actually wrote it in the book. So we've been talking about giving power to Hashem, right? And as Hashem, as our only power, is the one in charge of the world. And really, we live in a world where Hashem is hidden. And in the absence of Hashem's hiddenness, in the void of Hashem's hiddenness, or rather on the outside of Hashem's hiddenness, it appears that people and things run the show. People and things run, are controlling the world. And so it looks like there are other powers. It looks like people have power, money has power, things have power. It looks like our children have all the power, but really we do. So when one of my children was 2 years old, we were making a puppet show. And my children were very much into puppets at that stage. We bought these adorable puppets from Shlomi's Judaica. They had just come out at that time. These adorable puppets, a family. And we built out of clicks and huge foam boards that we bought at Scribbles. We bought a beautiful, we made a huge real life puppet theater. And as the kids were finishing it and we designed it and all that, then we took out the puppets and we started getting ready to make a puppet show. And everyone was very excited. All the kids were very excited, except for my 2-year-old. She took one look at those puppets and she burst out crying and was terribly afraid. And so I took her to, what I did is I picked her up and I held her and I walked behind the puppet theater, behind the stage, behind the curtains. And I sat down on the floor with her and picked up one of the puppets and held it. As I held her, I held the puppet and I said, see, it doesn't have hands. It cannot move on its own. It's just a doll. It only moves when we move it. It's not really alive. It's not really a thing. And after a few minutes of doing that, she was willing to touch it. She was willing to engage with it. She was willing to play with it. And she understood, she got the concept that this puppet doesn't have any energy of its own. It doesn't have any life force of its own. It only could move when we pull the strings. And as I was writing in the book about Hashem's power and how Hashem is our one and only power and how he alone controls the world and how recognizing that gives us such a sense of calm and peace. I thought of that story where my little 2-year-old went from being so afraid and so freaked out and so all over the place to really feeling calm and joyful and sitting down on the couch and exciting, looking forward to the puppet show. Every single day when we say Shema, it's like Hashem is inviting us behind the curtains of the puppet show. The world is like a puppet show. Hashem is really the only one pulling the strings. It looks to us like everything is moving on its own in random, chaotic movements. It looks to us like people have power of their own, like things have power of their own, like politics, like policies, like the government has power. It's nothing. None of it has power. It's only Hashem. And in terms of our parenting, it looks like circumstances beyond our control will have the power to make our children who we want them to be or to make them chas v'shalom the opposite of who we want them to be. And so every single day we say Shema. And with that, it's like we're letting Hashem take us behind the curtains of the world, to pull aside the curtains of his hiddenness, and just for a moment, for Hashem to show us, see, it looks so scary, but it's really just me. Nothing can happen without me. Nothing can happen without my permission. And I'm holding you, and I'm protecting you, and I'm taking care of you. And everything that I'm doing is really only for you and leading towards Geula. That's what this is about. So I want to encourage everyone. We talked about a bunch of practical things that we could do. Number one, saying Shema every day and letting Hashem take us behind that curtain to really understand and appreciate and remember and hold that awareness that he is our security. We're dependent on him. He's our power. And we can give him all the power so that we don't have to give it to other people. And to ask ourselves that why and let Hashem be the why, and to, in a reactive state, to step out of the situation, to stop, drop, and get calm. How? By using that power tool, by pausing, by observing what's going on and bringing Hashem into the story, bringing our value of connection into the story and resolving to engage from that place. I want you to have a wonderful week. And as you go through the week, if you have a moment of look out for a moment of connection, look out for a moment of awareness of conscious choice, and please share it with the group next week. Next week will, Mitzvah Shem, be our closing week for this series, and I'm looking forward to it. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and thank you all for joining. Good to know.